Draco Malfoy, and the year when everyone suddenly paid attention to him. But Draco will hear about this. Chapter 13. The Vanishing Cabinet. Draco had been out with Harry, his head comfortably pillowed on his lap as he read through his potions notes, and Harry's fingers threading absent-mindedly through his hair as Colin Creevey came running towards them. "Harry!" he yelped, his face flushed from running. "I've got a message from Professor Dumbledore for you! He wants you to come to his office immediately!" Both of them tensed instantly. Harry's hand stopped its movements. "Did he say what he wanted?" Draco asked despite himself. "No," Creevey shook his head. "Just that it was urgent." Harry caught Draco's eye. The look he gave him was laced with meaning. Dumbledore had most probably found a Horcrux. They both knew it. Hesitantly, Draco straightened himself, returning to a sitting position and allowing Harry to stand, but not without giving Draco a kiss in parting. "Let me know," Draco said under his breath. "I'll try," Harry promised, and then he was gone, making his way up to the castle. Creevey followed a little awkwardly. Draco lingered at the spot they'd left him only for a moment before returning to the school as well, making his way up to his dormitory. He would snatch some books and the enchanted parchment and hole himself up at the library until Harry contacted him. Then maybe... But his train of thought crashed when he reached the corridor to his dormitory. The door to the sixth-year dorm stood ajar, and he could hear a voice spilling from it. A very familiar voice, and it was laughing. The laughter wasn't of the pleasurable kind. It was shrill and high-pitched, hysterical, with an edge of desperation in it, and Draco could swear it was interlaced with little sobs and sniffs. Draco halted, considering his options. He couldn't confront Nott. He had done that, and it hadn't ended well. But he couldn't ignore it either, could he? He knew Nott was working for the Dark Lord. He had a responsibility to his own side, at the very least. He acted without making the conscious decision to. He slipped the invisibility cloak out of his pocket. He had never returned it to Harry, who had insisted he kept it around for now, after what had happened with Nott, and covered himself with it. Then, keeping his steps as silent as he could, he crept into the room, wand drawn. Nott was sitting on his bed, face in his hands. He was obviously having some sort of nervous breakdown, and that didn't bode well for them. Draco knew there was no subtle way to do it. Nott would realize. But he had to know. He would never forgive himself if something happened and he could have stopped it. So he trained his wand on Nott and whispered under his breath, "Legilimency." Nott's words were down, as he knew they would be. He was too emotional, and he was not expecting an attack, thinking he was alone. It was easy for Draco to dive into his mind, even without eye contact, and he quickly found flashes of him entering the room of requirement over and over again, trying to fix some sort of cupboard. A vanishing cabinet, the one Fred and George had stuffed Montague into last year. The twin was owned by Borgin at his shop, and he was keeping it around for Nott to create a bridge into Hogwarts so the Death Eaters could enter. And he had done it. The cabinet was finally fixed, and they were coming tonight, and... Nott cried out, and Draco was flung out of Nott's mind, wards up again. Nott was on his feet, wand in his hand, eyes wide as he scanned the room. "Where are you?" he called, but Draco was not sticking around for Nott to find him. He was already retreating as quietly and as quickly as possible. Just as he was turning around the corner, Nott was firing a course at the door, but Draco was too fast. He was running down the corridor, out of the Slytherin quarters, all the way up to Dumbledore's office. Only when he reached the gargoyles did he pull off the invisibility cloak, realizing that he had no idea about the password. "Fuck!" he called. "Please, let me in! There's something I need to tell the headmaster!"
"Not without the password,"
the statue told him, its voice bored. "Oh, come on!" Draco yelled. "Harry Potter is in there right now! I know he is! We're basically a package deal. If you can let him in, you can let me..." But at that moment, the gargoyles moved, much to his surprise, revealing a staircase. Harry came hurrying down, halting when he spotted Draco.
"What are you doing here?"
He blinked. "I need to speak to Dumbledore," Draco told him urgently. "I just used Legilimency on Nott, and he found a way to let Death Eaters into the castle! Tonight!"
"Bloody hell!"
Harry muttered, but he grabbed Draco's arm and turned on his heels, pulling him up the stairs towards Dumbledore's office. Harry's knock was only perfunctory as he reached the door. He immediately pushed in Draco on his heels. The headmaster stood behind the desk, looking up in surprise.
"That was fast,"
he noted, then frowned.
"Mr. Malfoy, Sir Draco has something important to tell you,"
Harry announced, his fingers still like a vice around Draco's elbow, and Draco took a shaky breath as he tried to find his voice. "Professor Dumbledore, I just ran into Theodore Nott in my dormitory." he explained, "and he was acting very strangely, which scared me. I've known for a while that he's been acting on the Dark Lord's orders, so I decided to use Legilimency on him, and I found out that he plans to help Death Eaters enter the school tonight. There's a vanishing cabinet in the room of requirement, which he fixed, and it now creates a bridge between Borgin and Berks at Hogwarts. He plans to act tonight." Silence met his words. Dumbledore was looking at Draco very closely, scanning his face. Then he nodded.
"Thank you very much for telling me this, Draco,"
he said.
"It will help me set up the proper protection for the school before Harry and I leave."
Draco blinked. Harry's jaw dropped.
"We're still leaving?" he called, incredulous. "You can't seriously be thinking of leaving the school when Death Eaters are about to—" "The school will be anything but unprotected, Harry, I promise you," Dumbledore interrupted him. "The teachers will be alarmed so they can protect the students, and additional order members will be present. But our mission is vital, Harry, and we need to finish it tonight. If something happens—"
Dumbledore's lips thinned, then he shook his head.
"It has to be tonight. We will just have to hurry back."
Harry was trembling with disagreement. Draco could feel it from his position next to him. But he did not voice it. Rather, he nodded.
"Good."
Dumbledore smiled.
"Now, please get your invisibility cloak. We really need to hurry."
Draco was about to open his mouth, but Harry's hand tightened around his arm. They left the office together, not speaking until they were well out of hearing distance. "Harry?" Draco asked finally when they were halfway down the corridor.
"Get the cloak out and put it on," he instructed. "You're coming into Gryffindor with me."
"What? Why?" Draco asked.
"Because I need to get something, and I need to talk to Ron and Hermione, and we don't have time, Draco."
Harry snapped his eyes wide.
"Just do as I say, okay?"
For once, Draco listened. He pulled out the cloak and slipped underneath it, following close behind Harry as they hurried all the way up towards the portrait of the fat lady. Harry threw the password at her and she swung aside, allowing them entrance. He slowed down a little now, allowing Draco to stay close as he tracked down Hermione and Weasley, who were sitting together on a sofa in front of the fireplace. Draco had no time to appreciate the coziness of the Gryffindor common room before Harry was already gathered their friends and directed them towards his dormitory, glancing behind himself as if he could somehow make sure Draco was following. He held the door open behind himself, and only when Draco pulled the cloak off himself, making Hermione and Weasley gasp, did Harry let it fall shut.
"Okay,"
Harry began, his voice firm and his words rushed.
"We have no time, so listen to me. Dumbledore wants me to accompany him to retrieve a Horcrux, but this means he's going to leave tonight, and Draco just found out that has found a way to help Death Eaters enter the school."
"He did not!" Hermione shrieked. The same moment Weasley muttered, eyes wide,
"Madeline's bollocks! Does Dumbledore know?" "He does, but he wants to leave anyway," Harry said grimly. "Thinks the school is sufficiently protected with the teachers and the order. I disagree, which is why—"
And at that, Harry turned across the room, opening his trunk to rummage through it. He returned with a number of things.
"I want you to contact everyone you can gather from the DA."
"But, Harry, are you sure?" Draco blinked. "This would be putting everyone in danger."
"Do you want Nott to succeed in whatever he's doing?" Harry demanded, his voice harsh. "Because I don't."
"Well, no," Draco sighed. "All right, fine."
"Good. Here," Harry said, shoving the Marauder's map at him. "Keep an eye on Nott. Maybe you can stop him before anything even happens. And this," he held up a small familiar bottle containing a golden potion. "I want you to share between the three of you. Less chance of you getting hurt."
"Now, wait a moment," Draco called. "We have no idea what you'll be faced with. You might need it more than us." "Draco is right, Harry," Hermione nodded, looking scared. "We don't want it. You take it."
"I'll be fine. I'll be with Dumbledore." Harry waved them off impatiently. "I want to know you lot are okay. Don't look at me like that, Hermione. I'll see you later." He turned to Draco again, taking the cloak from him and draping it over him again, making him splutter. "Come on, I'll bring you out of here. You two try to send messages to the DA with those coins and meet Draco outside, okay?"
Hermione and Weasley nodded, thunderstruck, and then Harry was pushing an invisible Draco back out the door and into the hallway. Only a minute later they left through the portrait hole, and Draco tore the cloak from his head. "I don't like this!" he dampened. "Big surprise." Harry rolled his eyes. "Neither do I, but we don't really have a choice right now, do we?" Draco didn't answer, and then he was grabbing the front of Harry's robes and pulling him into a deep kiss. The fat lady cleared her throat delicately behind them, but Draco ignored her. "Come back safely, asshole," Draco breathed when he pulled back. "I'll never forgive you if you get yourself killed."
"Same."
Harry sent him a soft smile.
You'd better be in one piece when I return, Draco, or I swear I'll find a way to make you regret it.
Noted. Draco grinned despite himself. He handed him the cloak. Now off you run and get us a Horcrux.
Will do.
Harry shrugged sheepishly, and then he retreated, leaving Draco to stare after him with mounting dread. The portrait of the fat lady swung open once more, only a minute after Harry had left, revealing a disheveled Hermione. Ron is following later. He's tracking down whatever Gryffindors he can find, she told him, pushing the almost empty bottle of Felix Felicis at him. Drink up. Ron and I already took our mouthful. Draco nodded, uncorking the bottle and downing it. The effect was immediate and stunning. Euphoria flooded his veins despite the seriousness of the situation, along with confidence and calmness. He raised his eyebrows at Hermione, who gave him a meaningful look. Come on, she said, nodding in the direction of the staircase, and Draco fell into step with her. We're meeting Luna on the way to the room of requirements. Can you track down Nott? Draco pulled out his wand and tapped it onto the still blank map, muttering, I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. The contents of the map revealed themselves immediately, and Draco scanned it as he walked, quickly coming to the conclusion that Nott was nowhere to be found. We're too late, he sighed. He's already at the room of requirements. So much for Harry's plan, she muttered. We can still help to try and stop them. Draco shrugged as they turned the corner heading for the room. If we head off Nott, he might never be able to complete his mission, and maybe then I can convince him to change sides as I'd originally... Wait, what are you all doing here? They had found Luna, but she was not alone. Eureka was standing next to her, currently tying her sleek black hair into a ponytail, and Ryan had his arms crossed, expression uncharacteristically serene. Abbas was fiddling with his tie, and Zoe and Karina were leaning against each other as if looking for comfort from the other twin. Viola had what Draco had lovingly dubbed her bitch face on, and Yatin was having a mouthy discussion with one of the portraits. Oh, you're not the only one who has means of communication across common rooms, Luna said cheerfully. As soon as I got your message, I contacted Eureka, and she brought the lot. Right, Viola asked. Who do we have to kill? Oh, just a couple of Death Eaters, Draco replied a little faintly. Not found a way to let them into the school, so we're going to stop them. So this is the kind of thing you guys do while we slither and sleep obliviously in our beds? Ryan asked, looking miffed. Well, that just won't do. I want a coin too. You'll let us in on the fun now, do you hear me? Fine, you'll get a coin, Hermione said consolingly. But we don't have time right now. Ron will be on the way with the other Gryffindors any moment, and we need to get to the room of requirement right now before not... The what now? Yatin asked, raising his eyebrows. Long story, Draco shook his head. Just follow me. Stop, not by any means available. Blow down every Death Eater in your path, and by Salazar, don't get yourself killed. Gotcha. Eureka nodded, her ponytail bobbing. Lead the way, Captain. So together they marched the remaining distance towards the room of requirement. Somewhere in his mind, Draco realized what an odd group they made. A Gryffindor, a Ravenclaw, and 8 Slytherins. But then again, usually he was the only Slytherin in a mop of Gryffindor, so he figured it made for a nice change. When they reached the corridor with the painting of Barnabas the Barmy, they quickly realized they were not the first to arrive, though. The entrance to the room was already carefully guarded by Order members. Draco saw Bill first, with his bright red hair, and then Dora, because she was standing next to him. Kingsley was positioned at the window, talking to a doe Patronus, and Lupin was facing them, his sagged face staring in horror as he watched them approach. What in Merlin's name are you doing here? He bellowed, making everyone jump. You're supposed to be in your common rooms. The teachers are just locking everything up to keep you students safe. Well, tough luck, Draco shrugged. We figured you could use backup. Backup, Lupin repeated, staring at him. No offense, Draco, I know you're talented, but you don't count as backup. I was the one who looked into Nat's mind, Draco countered, and he knew somewhere deep down that the only reason they were standing up to Lupin this way was because of the potion running through his system. I am the only one who knows exactly what he planned. All you got was a third-hand report from Dumbledore. He's got a point, Remus, Dora muttered, watching him with obvious discomfort. We can't let them stay, Tonks, Lupin yelled, turning on her. They might get killed.
We can't exactly send them back to their dorms either,
Kingsley frowned.
I got the report from Snape. They've been sealed. He is on the way here.
Oh, for minutes! That's how far he came before he was interrupted by the sound of rushed footsteps, and Weasley turned around the corner, Ginny, Longbottom, and for some unfathomable reason, Demelza Robbins, Harry's chaser, who hadn't even been part of the DA in the first place, on his heels. Lupin looked like he was ready to explode.
Is there any way we could just pack the lot of them into the Great Hall and seal it?
He asked through clenched teeth. And who will do that? Dora snorted. We're short of people as it is. We don't know how many Death Eaters will come after all, and they might be here in a moment. Lupin threw up his hands.
So let us help,
Weasley said eagerly.
We know our spells, and we want to. You're students, Lupin called. You're on the range.
I'm not, Viola shrugged. And neither is Yatin. Can we vouch for our fellow Slytherins?
No, you cannot, Miss Richmond.
Lupin snapped. Lupin, Snape's voice drawled as he turned across the corner.
What in Salazar's name are you shouting up?
Then he froze, staring, and Draco admitted it must have been quite a sight. All these Gryffindors, Slytherins, and a single Ravenclaw escaped from their confinements ready to battle Death Eaters. There were not enough house points to take, Snape muttered, blinking.
Someone explain.
For once, no Slytherin volunteered. Better to leave that to the Gryffindors. He already hated them anyway. Only the Gryffindors seemed to disagree and think this was a Slytherin matter, so it was Luna who ended up speaking, remarkably calm, as she informed Snape. We are helping you fight the Death Eaters.
Are you now?
Snape asked, his tone sharp as a blade.
And who ordered you to do that?
Well, Luna said, frowning and looking at Hermione for help. Harry, I assume? Draco flinched. That had been the wrong thing to say, and the sour look on Snape's face confirmed it.
And what authority, he ground out, does Harry Potter have to send all his friends into mortal danger?
Before any of them could answer, though, a sound startled them out of their argument. Someone was turning the doorknob to the room of requirement from the inside.
They're coming,
Dora hissed, raising her wand.
Everyone into position,
Kingsley called.
You lot stay back,
Lupin called.
And for Merlin's sake, keep your wand at the ready.
And so they did. Draco was clutching his wand, pointing it at the door, and next to him he saw Hermione do the same. On his other side, Abbas's hand was trembling a little, but he was standing with his head held high. And then the door opened, and Nott stood there, holding a strange, shriveled device in the form of a hand. Draco faintly recognized it from one of his early visits to Borkin and Burke's with his father. Was it called the Hand of Glory or something along those lines? He knew it was used by smugglers. And then Nott threw something up in the air, and everything went black. Peruvian instant darkness powder. Draco cursed. Hermione's hand felt for him and caught onto his arm, holding on. A curse cut through the darkness, but they couldn't be sure who threw it or whether it connected. There was movement, and Draco was sure that Nott was escaping with the Death Eaters. What had he read about the Hand of Glory when he was a child? Gives light only to the holder?
We need to get out of here,
he told Hermione.
How?
She called, her voice panicky.
Abbas,
he yelled.
Yes,
the other boy called, his voice shaky, and Draco reached blindly into his direction until his hand connected with something, her shoulder.
Take my hand,
he said, and Abbas did.
Is anyone next to you? There was Zoe, I think. Zoe? I'm here. Good, hold on to each other. Let's all find each other and then get the fuck out of here.
That's how they did it eventually. Zoe held on to her sister, who held on to Viola, who held on to Yatin, who held on to Ryan, who held on to Eureka, who held on to Luna. The Gryffindor party was too far out of their reach, but Draco hoped that they'd somehow find their own way back. After all, Ginny was with them. Ginny was smart enough for all of them. Draco had a vague sense of direction, and the potion did the rest. He led them out of the corridor safely until the total darkness lifted, and they stumbled into the light, panting.
Oh my god,
Yatin panted. I'll never take my Harrys for granted again.
Where the fuck did the little shit don't go?
Viola demanded, looking vicious. I'll give him a good hex for blinding us.
Where are the others?
Ryan asked, looking over his shoulder, but at that moment Ginny broke out of the darkness arm in arm with Dora. She was followed by Weasley, Lupin, Longbottom, Kingsley, Robbins, and Bill. Ryan immediately moved towards Ginny, only to be pushed hard in the shoulder by her.
What are you doing here? She demanded. You're not even part of the DA.
Just became an honorary member, he grinned. Plus, I always wanted to play knight in shining armor.
Don't you dare!
She glared.
I can take care of myself.
Don't I know it? He snorted, but he slung his arm around her anyway, and she let him. Draco saw Bill grin in the background. Now let's hunt down some Death Eaters, shall we?
Where's Snape?
Kingsley asked, frowning.
I don't know.
Lupin shook his head.
Maybe he managed to follow them. I couldn't locate him with my spell. Fine, Kingsley muttered. Let's just go and see if we can find them before they do whatever they came here for.
There was a flurry of movement, and through it all, Lupin caught Draco's eyes.
There's no chance that you're going to back down, even if I ask you to, right?
He sighed, sounding pained.
Sorry, Draco shrugged, but this is sort of the place to be for me tonight. Fine, Lupin rolled his eyes. Don't get yourself killed, do you hear me? I'm not explaining that to your mother.
I'll try my best, Draco grinned, falling into step next to Lupin. Draco pulled out the map as they walked, scanning it for the Death Eater's points, quickly finding them scattered through the corridors surrounding the astronomy tower, apparently battling some of the teachers. Nott had made it to the top of the tower, Snape in tow. This way, Draco told Lupin, showing him the map, and Lupin glanced at it before calling out to the others, pointing them into the right direction. When they arrived at the scene of combat, it was pure chaos. The teachers were hopelessly outnumbered, but holding their own admirably, firing spell after spell to protect themselves against the attacks of the Death Eaters. They didn't hesitate to jump to their aid. Lupin and Draco were closest to Professor McGonagall, who was fighting 3 people at once. Draco had seen them before, in passing, but couldn't recall their names, so they joined her side, making the fight more even. "Mr. Malfoy," McGonagall called, somehow managing to still sound stern despite her breathlessness. "Why are you not in your dormitory?"
"Oh, I'm sorry,"
Draco replied, deflecting a curse with a shield charm. "Honestly," she snapped, firing a curse at one of her attackers, barely missing. "Potter is not even in the castle, and you still managed to get yourself in trouble."
"Believe me, Minerva, I had that conversation with him and all his friends," Lupin muttered rather grimly. His curse at least grazed the Death Eater he was aiming for. "They would not listen."
"How many of them are out of bed?" she demanded, sounding appalled.
12 or 13? Draco guessed, frowning. "Don't make me count, I'm sort of concentrating." And then he fired a stunning curse right at the Death Eater closest to him, hitting him right in the chest. He went down like a sack of potatoes.
"Ha!"
Draco called, triumphant. "Well, don't expect house points," McGonagall hissed, deflecting the vicious curse that was sent after them in response with an authoritative "Particle!" The remaining 2 Death Eaters were fired up now, though. They kept blasting spell after spell against their defenses, giving them no space for an attack. "Okay," Lupin muttered. "I'm going to lower my shield just for a second, and then I'll—" But he didn't have to, because at that moment various things happened at once. On one side, the first Death Eater was hit by 2 spells at once, falling flat on his face before he could even put up a defense. On the other side, the second Death Eater suddenly held in, seemingly confused, only to then drop to the floor as if his strings had been cut. Behind the bodies emerged Jenny and Ryan, as well as Luna and Eureka. Luna looked like she could have stumbled upon the sea by accident. Eureka was frowning at the Death Eater as if he had personally offended her. Ryan was kicking the Death Eater he had taken out, probably to check he really was unconscious. Jenny was looking at them, her head slightly tilted in question.
"You alright there?" she checked.
"Brilliant, thanks to you," Draco grinned. "Muddling is happening," McGonagall muttered behind them. "Severus always told me the Gryffindors were going to corrupt the Slytherins on a large scale because of Potter, but did I listen? No!"
"Professor, no offense, but we just saved your life." Ryan grinned at her. "Leave the lamenting for another day, okay?"
McGonagall glowered at him, but then there was some kind of explosion further down the corridor, and they all whirled around. Dora, Flitwick, Viola, Yatten, Abbas, Demelza, and Hermione were all locked in a major fight with about 4 Death Eaters, and one of their curses had just crashed into the east wall, throwing bricks everywhere. Lupin was already running towards them, but Draco stayed where he was, figuring their odds were already good enough. Instead, he turned to McGonagall. "Did you see Nott and Snape pass?" he asked. "Yes." McGonagall frowned, and she turned to point at the staircase leading towards the astronomy tower. "But you can't follow them. They wanted it." "What?" Draco called, eyes widening it. "But Mama tried to go through earlier, but there was no way." McGonagall shook her head. "We think you need to be marked by you-know-who to pass. That's why Severus could follow. We'll have to trust him." Draco nodded, biting his lip. That didn't sit quite right with him, but he knew there was no way around it, and then more Death Eaters approached him and McGonagall, and there was no time to ponder the matter. Draco turned towards the new arrival, and his eyes widened. The man approaching him was large and seemed to be covered with unruly gray hair, making him look animalistic. It didn't help that he was baring his teeth at Draco, which were pointy and had fresh blood running from them. For the first time, fear spiked through the haze the potion had created. "Well, well," the man drawled, and even his voice didn't sound quite human. "If that isn't Draco Malfoy." Draco turned his head to look for McGonagall, but she had disappeared, locked into her own fight already. He was all alone. I've been wanting to meet you for a while,
the man said, taking another step closer to him. Draco took a step back.
I heard so much about you, you see.
Did you? Draco said despite himself. All bad, I hope. The man laughed, and it ran chills down Draco's spine.
You've got backbone,
he praised.
unlike your father. Too bad I had to kill you, but I'm sure you'll taste all the juicier for it. The Weasley boy was most delicious too, after all.
Draco felt a wave of nausea now, and he couldn't help but look around until he found a body lying on the ground and not far from the staircase to the astronomy tower. Bill.
It's a good name for me.
The man mused, and Draco was starting to connect the dots, was starting to realize who he was faced with, and he was clinging to his wand, trying to remember any spell that was strong enough to repel a werewolf when... Don't you dare touch him, Greyback! Lupin growled, stepping in front of Draco, wand drawn. His shoulders were tense, and he was vibrating with fury in a way Draco had never seen before.
Remus Lupin,
Greyback appraised, raising his eyebrows.
Look at you. Didn't turn your back on Dumbledore after all.
You didn't really think I was going to follow you and that psychopath? Lupin snorted. He killed some of my closest friends, and you condemned me to this life. I'll never align myself with the likes of you.
No, right.
Greyback grinned, looking quite self-satisfied.
I did that.
Then he shrugged.
Suit yourself. Your death, not mine.
The next thing Draco knew, Lupin and Greyback were locked in a fierce duel, and it was all Draco could do to stumble out of range, to not be hit by any stray curses. He almost stumbled right into the next Death Eater, and this one he knew by name, though he had also only heard it in passing. Yaxley! He had once delivered something to the manor while Draco was there for the holidays, and Draco had heard him and his father talking. Yaxley seemed to have had a similar thought because he sneered and immediately fired a curse at Draco. He ducked, only just getting out of the way before firing his own spell. Yaxley, though, was vicious. He kept firing curse after curse, giving Draco barely enough time to deflect. And then a stunning spell that Draco had not cast hit Yaxley right in the chest, making him sink to the floor. Draco whirled around, ready to thank his savior, and gaping when Harry whirled past him, running through the mass of fighting people. Harry! Draco called and didn't hesitate to follow after him.